Okay, let's get going. I want to cover a few things. As you can see, we're getting to the end of the semester here. So looking pretty good so far. We have a couple of issues that have popped up, and we'll have to kind of get to the bottom of that. But you can see we're here on the week of July 12th, and you can see that we have the recitation project coming up this week. So it's actually a pretty small window for that. So most of the work will actually be done during the recitation. So hopefully whatever you have to do to kind of finish it up shouldn't be too much. So you can wrap up the recitation project this week. But it's called a project, but actually a lot of it is going to actually be done during the recitation period. So hopefully it should be almost kind of like classwork. You get that done and then you'll turn that in. Make sure you wrap up all of your assignments. As you can see, we don't have that much time to work with. We have this week and next week, where next week is your final. And then we actually have to grade and submit all of the final grades, which includes doing your second chance calculations. So we have to do all of that in fairly short order. So we don't have that much time. If you have any late assignments or whatever, do try to get them in as soon as you can. Okay. The layout of the exam will be kind of similar, but it's almost like 3 mini exams inside of the larger exam, right? So as you know from the second chance policy, you have like the section 1, which aligns with exam 1, and section 2, which will align with exam 2, and then section 3, which basically covers essentially Excel and the stuff that we're covering right now. So it's almost like three mini exams, and within those 3 mini exams, it's the similar type of thing that you saw before. So you remember from exam 1 and exam 2, you have all of these quick questions. Could be true, false, could be multiple choice, could be short answer, whatever. And you can, get through all of that, and then there'll be some longer programming type of snippets at the end, right? Whether in the first section it's with HTML, right? It could be with the tags, could be lists, it could be tables, right? And then on the JavaScript, all of the event-driven stuff, it could be the arrays, it could be the for loops, those type of things, okay? And then you have the final exam, which will cover spreadsheets and whatnot. So what I did under the resources, and I highlighted in red because I know that there's a lot of information on there by now. I put in like the spreadsheet example questions along with the data file and the spreadsheet solution. So go ahead and check that out later. And if there's any questions, let us know. I believe the TAs should already be working with you to kind of review points for the exam. I'll spend some time after I get through the lecture today. So what I have to cover is basically chapters 12 and 22, which shouldn't be too bad. And really similar to in exam 1, where there's some bit of like kind of, I would say, computer history or book learning. You want to read those chapters essentially. We're not really covering like line by line those vocabulary terms or some of those concepts in the lecture. So those are the things you kind of read from the book and just understand basic facts, right, or ideas that are in the book. So by the same token, what we've been covering recently towards the end, well, there's the Excel, which is mechanical. So you'll kind of talk about doing like VLOOKUPs and doing cell references, different types of charts or visualizations from Excel. But then the other parts will be looking at, information that you would pick up from the book, really, right? So you memorize, certain aspects of the books or just know where to look it up in the book. So in that way, part of exam, that third section of the final exam will line up with what you were doing for exam 1, which is essentially book. It's just testing that you read the book, right? So that's kind of it for this, right? But anyway, the main part in terms of the mechanical part, which would be the spreadsheets, is right here, okay? So take a look at that. Actually, let me just open it up for you while I'm here. Okay. And let me zoom it. right? So all of these different things that we've talked about, you know, I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can kind of see all of these different things. It's basically talking about charts. You know, you look at the table, like how do you do the table, how you do the filter, the rows, the columns, the cells, cell reference. Near the end, we talked about pivot tables and VLOOKUPs. These are the type of charts at the top here, right? So you can see basically kind of little things you can read on, and you can work with the sheet. And I'm going to open up a sheet here. So it'll ask you questions, and then this is the data sheet. You're probably not going to be able to see this. I guess I can zoom it up here. View, zoom, let's say 200%. Okay, and then you can work with this sheet. So you'll see it once you open it up. So you can play around with it on your own time, check it out. And like I said, the TAs will be also working with you at detail on this, okay? And so what I'm gonna do today is on this slide here, which I posted into the resources down here, okay? So you have 11 and 12 slides, and then you have chapter 22 slides. So we covered chapter 11 before, and then I'll kind of get into this with chapter 12. So I'll go through that, and then we should still have some time after that, which I'll go into js.do and just basically work through JavaScript examples, right? Because I think that's kind of where people still have some problems based on what I've seen from assignment 3 coming in. So hopefully we can kind of address that so you can be solid for the final exam. Okay, and I believe the TA should be covering that also. And then, you know, one thing, unfortunately, I have to kind of make a note. We basically had 5 people that turned in almost exactly the same HTML assignment for their homework, which was a bit unfortunate. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we do have the ability to scan everybody's assignments, compare against other student submissions, as well as from prior semesters, as well as what's on the internet. So it's unfortunate that we're going to have to go through some academic integrity filings for 5 of our students. So, you know, I'll be sending out mails on that shortly for those that are involved. If you'd like to send me an email and let me know what your position is on that, you can feel free to send me an email on that before I send out my notice on the academic integrity violations. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead with chapter 12 here. So chapter 12 is talking about privacy and security. Okay, so, you know, we'll kind of go through that. And I'll just talk to each of those points. And a lot of this will be covered in the book too, okay? All right, so there's this idea where, like in the 4th Amendment, you know, you're talking about people's right to privacy. And it's really kind of like in the context of the government, right? Whether the government has access to this type of information that's considered your own, right? Basically your identity and all the other information that you'd like to keep to yourself, right? So the challenge that comes in with current technology is that we're not really just talking about government anymore. Now you're talking about other entities. Could be business or just in general, like anyone else in terms of like protecting your privacy. So, you know, it's just kind of one of those things that right now, whatever you do on your computer, it's just being logged all over the place, whether it's the location of your phone, your browsing history, whatnot. Your information is all over the place. Your financials are all over the place. You probably know about like the different things that have been hacked recently. you always see it in the news talking about your credit card information has been hacked, identity theft, all of these different types of information. And you don't even know whether your information is out there or not, right? So, with the technology the way it is right now, it's a pretty big challenge, right? So this idea of privacy is a big issue to deal with right now, okay? Okay, so this basically talks through example here. So let's say you went and bought something, right? And the fact that you bought something, you might not think of it as too much information, but people can actually derive a lot of information from what you bought, right? That's the whole idea at Amazon, right? Amazon is always constantly looking to try to improve the suggestions that it's making to you. So you have all this information that is generated based on your transaction to kind of say, would you be interested in some other types of products that could be related, or it could just identify the type of demographic or profile that you have, and then generally what are the types of products that demographic or profile would be interested in, okay? And so these are important questions that come out in terms of like, what is the information that's generated? Who has access to that information? Can they sell that information and make money off of that? So these are the types of questions that come up. Okay. Yeah, so this is just, some comments about, privacy and how important that is. Okay. All right, so there's this aspect of like the right to be forgotten, right? So, and it's kind of more specific to the European Union, although there's other places around the world, and it's also something that is dealt with here also, in terms of you're able to get your information taken out, right? So if something is out there, you can pull that information out, okay? And so this part talks about like, from the European Union standpoint, like Google talks about the right to be forgotten program. And there's been a lot of requests, right? Millions of requests to pull things out. And so, and most of them were from like private individuals, like, they just said, I don't want this information out there. And, that was like part of the directive that Google had to honor, okay? And so, it could be anything in terms of like, social media, news articles, and government pages, right? And then this is just a link here for that, okay? So we're talking about this in terms of the context of the European Union. So what does that mean for the US, right? And so, they talk about that in the context of the First Amendment, okay? And, it's one of those things it's basically an individual saying that, they don't want their information to be out there, right? And there's certain parts of that. Okay, which information are we talking about, right? Just don't put your name out there to say that you're associated with a certain political belief or religious belief or whatever information. You don't want that information to be out there. So it's still open. It's still open for debate, right? There's still things going on with that, and then there's also been wider debate or pushing on this, especially like in Asia, right? So they've been kind of going through this in India and in Hong Kong, number of other places talking about this type of stuff. So this is still a hot topic, and it's still open for debate on, or tug of war to try to protect this information, okay? So this is one aspect that seems to address part of this, right? And this is kind of like a specific use case talking about, let's say, juvenile records. So they talked about like, there are certain things that may happen as a juvenile, and you can seal those records so that you basically become an adult and you kind of wipe those things clean. This is like one of those type of things to kind of try to follow along to extend the coverage in terms of what's already available, before the technology came along, in terms of like, like juvenile records as an example. Okay, so this is just like another example, right? It's probably like kind of one of those things you kind of say, well, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty type of thing, right? So you have one of these things that there's a use case that you were arrested, you agree to get kind of like a plea bargain type of thing, right? Just kind of go in there and says, okay, you agree to this, and then we'll kind of clear your record, right? It's almost like, I guess, if you get caught speeding, you get like that whole speeding thing, and they say, okay, you plead out, you pay the fine, and then you won't get dinged on your insurance, let's say. So basically you do the program and it says, okay, your record will be clean. Okay, so that's fine. When you look at it, your record is clean, right? But if somehow you have something like this, then you're kind of out there, right? It's out there. It doesn't matter that your record is clean. This information is out there. You didn't get convicted. You were put out there, and even though later on your record was clean, your information is out there, and pretty much people will take it that, yeah, this person got arrested, and we're not going to hire them, let's say, in this case. Okay. So the other aspect of this is talking about security. So how secure is anything, right? Whether it's like what you do on your phone or on your desktop computer, or whichever companies are holding your private information, right? So there's like different things here. We talk about, you probably all have signed on to various things where, whether you go to your doctor's office or you're interacting with someone online, whether it's like, you open up XYZ account on social media or wherever, you have like these long legal agreements, and kind of say what we can do with your data and stuff like that. And then pretty much everybody just kind of checks it off and says, yes, I'm going to sign away my data. And then you can do whatever you want with it. And then you get access to whatever thing you're trying to get access to. But, there is like these different options in terms of like what to do with that data. Okay. So, the most restrictive is this one, where you said, well, you can't use the data at all. Right, the information has to be deleted when the business is finished with it. I think in practice, there's very few places that are going by this option here, right? And then there's the approval or opt-in. Okay, now this is one of those types of things where it's part of that whole legal agreement that you sign off on to join, whatever thing you're doing, whether it's to join like a subscription service, or you're buying something or whatever. Yeah, you just kind of, you don't even read it probably, right? You just kind of check it off and say, I'm in. So opt in versus opt out, I'm not really sure like there's that much difference, right? So to opt out, right, it just means like by default, by you using like whatever that service is, whether it's you use the phone or you use a certain program or whatever, like everyone would just say, yeah, you are already giving up your rights to your data already. And unless you explicitly, tell them, I don't want you to do anything with my data, right? I don't want to give up the rights to my data, then that's the opt-out, okay? But like in practice, whether it's opt-in or opt-out, I think it kind of works out to be the same, right? And that's how a lot of these providers are saying, if you're going to use the service that we're going to provide you, you're basically agreeing to give up your data, okay? Now, here with the no limits, basically, I can take the data for my own use. I can give it up voluntary to other people. I can share it with other people. I can sell it to other people. This is like with no limits, right? For internal use, it'll be sort of like what I was saying, what Amazon would be doing, right? So Amazon would be looking at that to kind of check on, opportunities to sell you other stuff, but they theoretically should be keeping it within Amazon, right? So that's like the difference between these right here, generally, okay? And this is just talking about the different places where information kind of leaks out, where the information will go out, right? And I'm not going to read that, but you probably can see all of this, right? Government and business and whatnot, right? And so OECD, which basically lists out these privacy principles, right, or aspirations that you want to have with respect to privacy. Keep on scrolling to this, okay? So basically, you want to try to minimize, right? Try not to collect everything under the sun. Example, right, is like, do you really need to collect the social security number of someone, right? All of those type of things, try to keep it limited in terms of what you're collecting. And of course, get the consent, right? Saying, okay, we're going to be collecting this information from you. Do you agree to that as part of using our service? Okay. The other aspect of this is if you're going to bother collecting this data, let's say we're talking about your credit score, right? You have a responsibility to make sure it's up to date, because obviously there's a lot of things that potentially could hang off of this, right? So if we have information about you, or we think we have information about you that is inaccurate, and then that's being used for all kinds of decisions, whether it's like your eligibility for insurance, whether it's for you to maybe get some financing, all different types of decisions can be made by this data, then you have an obligation to try to make sure that it's accurate and complete. You don't want to essentially like give out false information or bogus information about people, because it kind of affects all aspects of their lives. And if I tell you that we're collecting data, to provide you better service or whatever, then, then I'm going to have to state that purpose and make sure that I'm using that data to actually support that stated purpose, okay? And, this is kind of like the complement to that, right? So the use limitation, you can't use the information for something other than what I told you I was going to use that information for, okay? And then, providing reasonable safety, security measures, right? So, I'm not just going to take your information and leave it on a piece of paper on my desk, right? So probably I want to have certain, provisions or processes to make sure your data is secure, right? In terms of like, let's say encryption, or in terms of, processes to make sure no bad actors get access to your data, okay? And then, essentially openness is like transparency, right? So make sure everyone has a view of like, what you're doing with data, how you're protecting the data, and stuff like that, okay? Yeah, and this participation where the individual knows what has to be collected, ideally the stuff at the top kind of tells you that already. So if you're the individual, basically like they're gonna basically tell you what is the purpose I'm collecting data from you, right? So this participation, the individual should know, right? Well, I kind of consider that to kind of be overlapping what we stated at the top. And then accountability. So whoever is like responsible for this data, they should be understanding what they're responsible, these privacy principles, and then they're going to make sure that whatever it is, the organization, the company, or whatever, is complying with these principles. Okay, so it's not just like something you put up on the wall somewhere and then everyone ignores it, right? So there's the idea of like, someone or the organization, management, whoever has to take accountability to enforce these principles. Okay, and so that's the idea with this OECD fair information practice. So this is just more examples of different types of information that's out there. You can see if you look at all of these different things, these are things that are out there. Everyone kind of knows about it. And, the information privacy here is very important, right? I think if you had any information that's on here, you would want to make sure like, people are using it for the right thing and people are putting out accurate information about you, right? Because it has an impact for all aspects of your life. Like I said, well, it could be whether you can get a job. It could be whether you get a loan or something. It could be, whether you can get insurance or whatnot. So all of these different types of things, you want to make sure like that information about you is secure. Okay. So there's like a kind of a couple of different things in the United States, right? So this is in contrast to this, right? So in the so this is like kind of like high level, top down, right? Coming down versus in the United States, basically you have like these various, almost like a decentralized view of looking at it, right? So in this case, this is talking about your privacy from a medical information standpoint. This is like PCI. It regulates credit card information. So, basically the organization will come around, right? They kind of set these rules and guidelines, and then they'll kind of make sure like the stakeholders are complying with it. So in this case, let's say the PCI, let's say you're anyone who takes credit card information. You could be a big business, you could be a small business, whatever, right? Or you could be facilitating transactions. They'll kind of have this like almost like audit or questionnaire and kind of say, okay, how you collect the credit card information, how do you store the credit card information? Do you pass the credit card information to anyone else? All that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff about anything that you may do with this credit card information as a business, let's say. And then if you can go through this audit and pass everything, then they'll kind of say you are PCI compliant, right? And similar for medical, right? So like your doctor's office or whatever, they'll kind of say, okay, we're compliant to like these regulation or processes, right? And so you'll have like all for different facets of these type of information, like I said back here. Okay, so it's handled more in a decentralized manner compared to what OECD is doing. Okay. So there's different types of tracking. Okay. So part of it here, where you have the website, sending it to other providers, to show you, your ads and products, right? And there's a couple of ways to do that, but you probably notice a lot of times you kind of click on something and then the website will send up something saying, hey, we're using cookies, right? And you have to kind of click through to acknowledge that there could be using cookies, and that cookies could be more than just to facilitate the transaction. So you remember like back in the early part, like in exam 1, they were saying like, how we use cookies to kind of simulate more of like a continuous connection between you and whatever server, whatever website you're going to. But those cookies basically can store anything. It can store all kinds of information, probably above what you actually need to facilitate that transaction. So, that's one aspect of like capturing information that can be used for tracking. Okay. And then, of course, you already know, most of you have cell phones. You already know that most of those phones have GPS information, right? So it's very easy to kind of see, where you are at any given point of the day, assuming you have your phone with you, right? Obviously, you're making phone calls. You have a microphone on your phone, so they're able to hear what you're saying or what the sounds are around you, I guess. So it's all kinds of information that's being collected from your cell phone as you're moving around and stuff like that. So, you may have seen in news recently about some things going on with Apple and how they're managing that. But it's still open discussion about the information that's being tracked on your cell phone. So this is cookies. This is what I was kind of talking about before. So you remember, like I said, this is where the cookies are all like storing these things. Here's all your clients that's going against your one server here. And the server is just hopping around from client to client. It doesn't maintain one continuous connection with the client. And so, this is talking about like the website for ads. They might sell it to other ad companies. And that's all a result of like cookies here. And that's why they have this whole thing where, if they're using cookies and whatnot, they have you click on it, right? And, it's just for you to know, right? But at the end of the day, if you really want to use the website, then you want to use it. So you're just kind of clicking through, right? Now, the other aspect here is talking about identity theft. So obviously, if you have all of this information out here, it's not that hard for someone to perform identity theft, right? So usually the most common thing is really around financial stuff, right? So opening up a credit card under your name, taking a loan out, that feels like a long time type of process. Although there are some places that give you like cash quickly, I think it's probably more common that you have like the whole credit card thing where people can get your identity, run out there and charge a whole bunch of stuff. They don't even have to go to a store, right? They could do it online and just try to take out your credit card and buy as many things as they can. Okay. And then this just talks about a couple of the recent cases, like I mentioned before, right? So you had TJ Maxx, you had Target, and yeah, lots of information have gone out there, and then they kind of have to tell everybody to go get this credit monitoring with Experian and stuff like that. But yeah, once you get your identity theft stolen, it's like a whole mess to try to clean that up again. But that's a very common situation these days. And part of it is like being able to do things so quickly, right? So in the old days, it would take you like days and days to get something done, right? Whether it's to settle a trade on the stock market, or whether it's to clear a check, or whatever, to move money around would take days, right? So if someone kind of stole your identity and was trying to do whatever in terms of pulling money out under your name, they might get caught because it just took so long to get things done, right? It wouldn't, be as quick as it is right now. Right now, you can probably like move money around depending on what you're trying to do, like definitely within the same day, right? So maybe there's a limit. Maybe you can't move more than a few $1,000s a day or something like that. But money can move around pretty quickly these days. And by the time you figure out that something is wrong, the money's already gone, right? So there was a couple cases in terms of like people wiring around millions of dollars, right? And because there's a pressure to get things done quickly these days, they didn't have very much time to check out like, why is this, suspicious looking transaction coming through? By the time they figured out something was wrong, the money is already like, disappeared into vapor, right? And it's very hard to go and get that money back once that's happened. So another challenge that we're facing these days, okay? Probably in terms of security, I don't know if some of you may have heard of these different types of things, but this is some of the different things here, okay? So malware, it could be any sort of things, right? It could be like something where, just for the heck of it, you download something and it totally like screws up your hard drive or just wipes everything or whatever, just for no good reason at all, just totally destroys your computer, right? But the other thing that, it could be doing is just like hijacking your computer to use it for resources, right? To, get it to do other things, right? Maybe it's use it to, in conjunction with other computers to do like a denial of service attack, let's say, right? So all of those different types of things are potential coming out malware. So ransomware, this is where it could deny you access to your computer, or it could deny you access to data that's important to you, right? For whatever reason, you might have this data that's local. It doesn't have to be local actually, but basically it just kind of locks you out and says, you can't get this data, right? I locked it up, put a password on it. You can't get to it unless you pay me some money, right? And then there you go. You have to pay some money to get it back, right? In the news, there's been some recent news about different situations like that where, the company can't even do business anymore because like their data or their computers have been locked. So that's like the idea of ransomware here, right? So it was recently happening on the Colonial Pipeline, where they basically shut down the pipeline. And the company Colonial actually happened to have to pay the money to not have that happen, and then they still did it anyway, right? So they paid millions of dollars, and then they still went ahead and shut down the pipeline anyway. So not a good story there, not a good situation there. Okay, a virus, right? Just like what happens with people, right? So the virus can come onto your computer, right? And then it does whatever, but another part of it, what it would do is like try to make copies of itself and just reproduce and spread itself to other computers, right? So the worm, I don't know how many of you have seen this, probably like in social media, right? Your whoever, one of your contacts sends you something and says, hey, watch this, right? And then you have to click on something, and the minute you click on it, like then it reproduces it and sends itself to all the other contacts on your list. So this is like something that probably a lot of you have seen already. And then an exploit is basically just openings or weaknesses in software that allows people to kind of get in there to get access to information they shouldn't get access to. Okay. So a Trojan, basically something where you click on that, to do something that looks fine, looks like there's no problem with it, but then behind the scenes, it basically opens up like backdoors or whatever, so other people can either get access to your computer or access to your data. So phishing, so most often it's kind of like an email, but it could be a text, that will get you to click on it. That's the idea. You click on it, and then it will go and do different things, right? Maybe it sends you to a fake website. It kind of says, oh, blah, 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 your account has been compromised. We need you to sign in so that you can reset your password or whatever, right? And it'll send you to whatever website. You think it looks official, and then you go in there and you start typing in your password and everything, and it's basically collecting that information, and then it's turning around and going to the real website under your name, and then like it's all over, right? So phishing is another very common thing, right? And so this is kind of like actually one of the common ways that a lot of hackers will get into like a company, like any large entity, right? So any large entity, they can have all kinds of security so that, a person from the outside can't randomly, hack into your system, break into your system. But that doesn't take away the human element. So phishing is generally how people can find openings, right? Once you get that, you open the door a little bit with the phishing, you get one person to give you their login to get into the system. That opens the door for them to, to totally wreak havoc and get inside your system, right? And so it's pretty interesting. Like, I work at a company that has thousands and thousands of employees, and we have tests, right? We send like fake phishing mails to our employees to see who's going to fall for it, right? And no matter how good you get the number to be, that you only get like 10% of the people to fall for the phishing mail or something like that, it's still a non-zero number, right? So, that's the human element of it. As long as you have people that have logins to these secure systems, and you only have to get one of them to fall for your phishing mail, you're going to get hacked, right? So that happens a lot, okay? So I've never seen a situation where 100% of the people pass the fake phishing email, right? It only takes one, which is the problem, right? So that's why there's other aspects beyond this, right? So you have your login, you get into it, and the computer system, and then you kind of have to have all kinds of other layers into it, right? So the way you look at security might be like when you go to a bank, right? I don't know how many of you still go to a bank, but if you ever went to a bank, right, you have a whole bunch of different layers of security, right? You might have the initial layer with the security guard at the front door. You might have, whatever is at the teller. You might have like the, whatever the windows and stuff like that. But, if you can get past that, then you have some other layers of protection, like let's say going to the vault, right? The vault is, let's say, locked up. It's a super thick, vault or whatever. It doesn't open, and not even the people there can open the vault or whatever, right? It's just like all kinds of different layers of protection. And that's what you have to do. You can't just count on one layer of protection. So anyway, I think I probably talked too much about phishing, but that's phishing, okay? And then you have this idea of like VPNs, right? So there's it stands for virtual private network. So again, it's one of those type of things to kind of create some level of protection, right? So you basically use that as opposed to, like, let's say I went down to Starbucks, right, and just started doing my banking transaction or something like that over the Wi-Fi at Starbucks. That's probably not the best idea, right? There's all kinds of like, ways that people can simulate, or not simulate, to actually, set up their own Wi-Fi, and you're kind of thinking, I'm connecting to XYZ, Wi-Fi, Starbucks, let's say. And of course, while you're connected to their Wi-Fi, they can see everything that goes through from your computer to whatever site that you're going through, right? They're basically just recording everything that's going through. And then, of course, what they're going to do with that once they have the right information from you. So the VPN is, trying to, provide that sandbox or area where you can do what you need for things that you need to keep very secure. Okay. Now, the other aspect of this is like encryption, right? So when I send stuff over the wire, right? We still call it over the wire. It doesn't necessarily have to go over the wire, obviously, but when I send information from point A to point B, generally you're not going to send the information unencrypted. You want to encrypt the data, right? So you have, I don't know, your whatever you consider very private information, if you just send it out there as is, like a plain text file, let's say for the sake of argument, you send that out there, no one's going to ever claim that that's a very secure thing for you to do, right? So that's why these encryption things happen, right? So there's two parts to the encryption, right? There's the act of encrypting it, and then someone on the other side has to know how to decrypt it, right? And there's a couple ways you can look at that. Like let's say I have a very simple key to do the encryption, right? So let's say, every time you see the letter A, that translates to be a 1, right? And then, so that's my key, right? Then like if B equals to 2 and C equals to 3, so on and so forth, right? Obviously, no one's ever going to have an encryption like that, right? But you can see it's like a very simple type of key. And then the decryption on the other end would be like saying, well, every time you see a 1, that would become an A, and 2 becomes a B, so on and so forth, right? So, you have like this encryption decryption thing going on here, okay? And so what happens is you have to make sure that the right person, right, has the keys. So if I encrypt something, whoever is on the other side, I better be sure it's the right person that, is having the decryption side of it. Otherwise, it's as good as me sending, unencrypted data to them, okay? So there's two types of encryption with these keys. There's the symmetric, where, the same key is used to encrypt and decrypt the message, okay? And then there's asymmetric, where you have different keys for one for encrypting and one for decrypting the message, okay? And so this is how you get into something called like a private key. So here's your on your left side, you have your unencrypted message, right? This is what you want to make sure is secure. And then you have, this is like a public key to do the encryption, okay? So then you have this encrypted data here. And then you have the private key. Now, the private key would only be held by the individual that you want to make sure that is receiving the information. They can decrypt it, right? And then it comes out over here, right? So how do you make sure that the right person has that private key? There's a couple of different ways to do that. So I guess a lot of times you probably see it already, whether it's on your mobile phone, whether you get stuff on your SMS or in some ways email. We can talk about how secure that is, but there's a lot of places that are kind of using it this way, where everything is keyed by your email or your phone, your SMS. And so that's how you would get information. So, whatever, I need to get a password, I need to, in this case, get a key or something. It'll say, oh, okay, well, how do I know you are who you are? I guess I'm going to figure out that, let's assume your email didn't get hacked. Right? So I'm going to send it to your email, and then that's how you're going to have the key to say you are who you are, and then you can do the decryption there. Okay, and you'll see more about like this whole public key, private key, way of sending data, encrypted data. Okay. So generally, I would say not too many people are using symmetric key. They're using more asymmetric key. And I would say this is, with the private key, probably one of the more common ways to handle sending encrypted data, okay? So this is a pretty interesting lecture, and you can just do a Google for a TED Talk with James Lin, and he'll basically go through like the different ways. In some ways, it's a little bit depressing. So about how easy it is for someone to hack through your data. But it's an interesting talk. So you can take a look at it on your own time here. Okay. So I covered this, and like I said at the beginning of this lecture, what I want to do is maybe we'll just take a couple-minute break, but I'm going to maybe do some review of different topics. I'm kind of thinking mostly JavaScript, because I saw most of you did fairly well on the beginning part of this course related to conversions and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to probably spend more time on the JavaScript side of things. So that's what I'm going to do for the second part of this lecture. And then likewise, when I do Wednesday, I'll do the chapter 22, and I'll do some more review for the exam. By that time, you should have had some time to look at the spreadsheet stuff and come back to me to let me know if you had any questions on the spreadsheet stuff. Okay, so why don't I pause here for, let's say it's 6:53 now. Let's say 6:55. I'll come back and I'll just have it as an open session. I'm going to cover a couple problems that I've been seeing people have with JavaScript. And we'll use that to prepare for the exam. Okay, so I'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, hello. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to use the remainder of this session to do some review on JavaScript. And I'll just kind of go through some of the questions or challenges that I've seen people have. And, once we get through it, people can send me stuff in chat on different things, and we can see if we can cover some of those questions also. Okay. All right. So let me see here. Just give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So let me see here. Where am I at? Okay. So let me just maybe talk through a couple of the different things that I've seen people have some issues with respect to JavaScript. And then I'll try to work through some of the code so you kind of see that we're just not like all over the place. So one place that I've seen people have problems with, and you might remember I've mentioned this a few times, is the distinction between a single equal, a double equal, right? And there's actually a triple equal too, but that's really not within the scope of this class. So I'll kind of focus mainly on the single equal versus double equal. And, if I try to keep it simple, the main thing really is that a single equal would be an assignment, right? So if I have a variable and I want to put something in that variable, or I want to assign that variable to something, let's say I have variable, hotel, and I have to say hotel equals to, let's say from the assignment, Bellagio, right? Then I would use a single equal, right? Now, if I have a value in hotel, let's say I've assigned a value to be Bellagio, and I want to check what is the value of Bellagio. So I have an if, and then I have like hotel, and then what I want to have is a double equal. Okay, and I think I demonstrated this in the last lecture, where if you go in there and you say if, and then you say variable equals with one equal sign to XYZ, whatever it is, that's always going to evaluate to true, right? I think I demonstrated this in the last lecture, right? So that's a huge problem, right? So not only does your comparison always come out to be true, you've actually changed the value of your variable, which is not what you wanted to do. You just wanted to compare, okay? So I saw a number of cases of issues with that in the assignment where there's no way your if logic is going to work correctly like that, because you're not using the double equal sign. All right, so the double equal sign is used when you want to do some comparison between something. Is the variable equal to whatever, right? So that's one thing that I saw a lot of problems with. I think we also have some problems in terms of like variable usage. What is the scope of the variable, right? Now, we talked about global variables, and we talked about variables within functions, okay? So global variable would be just like, let's say here, where you see where it has script here, right? And then you have like down here with the other script here. If I declare like this variable up here, or where am I? Where's the other part here? Yeah. If I declare like another script and close script here, and then I declare a variable, those will be really essentially global variable, right? But now if I declare a variable here, let's say this var random number, that variable only exists within the scope of this function, okay? And remember, when you look at this, although it's not good practice, of course, you can see it happen, and technically there's nothing to prevent you from doing it. I can declare var, let's say random number up here, right? That's not the same thing, right? So I can declare var random number, do something with it here, and I can do something with it here. And they're essentially like two different variables. I know it's confusing because they have the same name, but you know, the variable here, this local variable is essentially another copy, another variable, although it looks the same because of the because the name is the same. Okay. And maybe I'll do a quick example with that later, right? So that's another issue in terms of variable scoping, right? So during the assignment, I know some people were declaring variables within, like, let's say you did the radio button and you did like the on click, you know, or whatever events. So you remember everything within there, that's your JavaScript code also, right? So people were declaring variables in there and then figuring that that variable would actually be available elsewhere, which is not, because when you declare that, within the on click, that's similar to this, right? So that's almost like I didn't declare random number anywhere out here. And then let's say I was down here and I said, oh, let me do a alert on a random number, which I'll show you in a second. It's not going to work. It's the same type of thing, right? And so for your assignment, where you should have declared, if you wanted to declare a global variable, would be to do like a script, and a script, let's say at the top of your body, where you can put in like, you know, destination and hotel or whatever, right? Like all those variables there. And then with your on click, those are essentially like your functions here. They would have access to it. So if you clicked on the radio button and you said, oh, the destination is Bellagio, then you would assign that to your global variable, okay? So, you know, I saw a number of like people get tripped up on that. So that was another challenge, which I'll try to do some demonstration on that too. Now, the other area I think maybe people want to kind of get some help on or clarification on is essentially the combination of for loops and arrays. Okay, like I said, it's very common to use like your for loop to work with arrays, and you probably saw that with the other assignment for assignment 4, right? So, you know, arrays are basically like, you know, a sequence of boxes with information in it, right? And then, you know, basically you're using the for loop to basically traverse the array, to go through each of the boxes to do something, right? Maybe it's just to read it and print it out, whatever it is. That's what that for loop is for. So it's very common to see for loops and arrays together. So that's like a third area where I think people had some problems. Yeah, so let's kind of go through those couple of things one by one. Those are the 3 things. I don't think I have time to cover more than that for this session, but I have another session on Wednesday, which we can cover other topics too, okay? So first thing is first, let's go through the equal and double equal thing again, all right? So here, all right, this is your variable declaration and initialization, right? But you're basically doing an assignment. You're saying n equals to 9, right? And in this case, you're saying x equals to 9 times 9, okay? So here, where it says the document is n result of n times n, okay? Let's say I'm gonna do like a if statement. So if, let's say if x equals to 82, which we know is not equal to 82, right? I'm just gonna say got here or something like that. Let me just put a return here just to separate this out if there was gonna be something here. Like that. And I'm just gonna say got here. Okay. And then I'm gonna close off with the curly bracket here. Okay. And let's run this. Okay, well, you can see I got here, right? Got here. But we know X is not equal to 82, right? X is equal to 81, right? And it says so right here, right? X is equal to 81, right? So what happened? It's because we used this the single equal sign, which is the assignment, okay? And actually, you know what? I should actually print out the value of X right here. Let's see what happens. See, it became 82. So not only did we go in here incorrectly because X was 81, we also set X to be 82 now, okay, which is probably not what we wanted, okay? So this is what we should be doing, okay? And correctly, it doesn't go in here, right? Because X is not equal to 82, all right? So hopefully that kind of clarifies, you know, when you should be using single equal versus double equal. And it just all kinds of bad things if you do a single equal sign in your comparison, okay? All right, now, you know, there's questions about the triple equal sign. It's fine, I can do a triple equal here, it's no problem, right? Same thing, okay? I would say the triple equal is just like a stronger comparison. Both double equal and triple equal are doing comparison, okay? But, you know, and I won't really get into the details in this class because it's really beyond the scope of what you have to know for this class. All you really have to know is the distinction between single equal and double equal. But I'll mention this. So basically, if I look at, let's say I look at 82 and I store like two variables, right? One variable can store 82 as a number, and then one variable can store 82 as a string, okay? I mean, you look at it, it looks like a string. I mean, it looks like a number, you can't tell, right? But the computer can tell, right? So some of you, I think on your assignment, you were trying to do calculations and then you would get a result that would come back to say NaN, which means not a number, right? And you look at that and you say, wait, why is that happening? It looks like a number to me, right? But there could have been like a space afterwards, and then it makes it look like a string, okay? Even though you see a number there, it's not a number, it's a string, okay? So when you use a triple equal sign, it's really to make a stronger comparison. It's not just to say, well, it looks like 81, but it's actually not, because it's 81 as a string, right? 81 as a string is not the same thing as 81 as a number, okay? So that's when you use a triple equal sign, when you really want to compare the type, right? And I don't want to really go too much more into that. That's all you really need to know, right? It's a little bit more advanced than what you need to know for this class. So don't stress yourself out too much about that. What's more important is the single equal and the double equal, okay? All right, so hopefully that clarifies that. Like I said, I saw a number of people doing the assignment 3 with the if condition with the single equal, which definitely is a big problem, right? So try not to do that for the exam, okay? And you get tripped up on it. You know, remember what I said about what's going to be at the exam, right? You probably saw that in exam 2, where we'll give you some code to read. You look at the code and you say, what is this number, right? So when I did this over here, let's say I did this, and then inside the exam, I would say, what is the value of X? Okay. You might be thinking, oh, well, X should be 81, right? You know, not realizing that actually X is 82. Okay. So we might ask you to trace some code, and you might see this and you might get tripped up because of this situation here, right? I know, like a normal person who's probably a programmer or whatever looking at this very quickly, you know, they might glance over this very quickly and they might just see this up here, And it might say, oh yeah, X is equal to 81, right? When in fact, this is something that should not be happening, right? Really, most people are assuming that this is what you should be doing, right? And then this should be 81, okay? But this is a question that could happen at the exam. So try to really understand the difference between equal and double equal, because you're gonna get questions like this to say, what is the value of X, let's say, okay? All right, I hope I didn't beat that dead horse, right? But that's one thing that I noticed tripped up a lot of people for assignment 3, okay? So let's go on to the next one, which is about variable scoping. I'll just clean out this part to kind of make this a little bit cleaner. So this kind of takes that out here. All right, so we were saying, okay, you have this random number that was created here, right? And let me see here. Well, we can show the random number, but let me see what happens if I do alert random number. I'm not going to type this. I'm going to just put this here like that. All right. So what do you think is going to happen? If I do this, so I'm going to click on this button. Remember, this is a button down here, right? So this button is going up to this function. It declares random number, right? And I'm going to do an alert here, pop up a random number. And then I'm going to come back here. You would think, well, I declared this random number. I should see it, right? Let's see what happens. Right, there's my random number here. And look, I have an error, right? And okay, well, I might as well bring up a point while I'm here. Remember, what are the different types of errors that we have? Well, you can have the error that will get caught. You can't even run the program, right? So that's just like a syntax error, right? You can have the error that you could only catch when you run it at runtime. Okay, so while it's running, then all of a sudden it exposes itself maybe, right? And then you have a logic error, right? So remember, there's 3 types of errors there that could potentially, 3 major categories of errors that could potentially be out there. The logic error, syntactically, it works fine, but for whatever reason, it's behaving in a way you didn't expect it. Let's say the for loop, you didn't like do the catch condition to stop the for loop, and it would just basically go into an infinite loop or something, right? As an example, right? So remember that there's 3 different types of errors there, right? Syntax, runtime, and logic error, okay? But let's look at this one, right? This is an example of the variable scoping, right? Like I said, whatever you declare in the function, it only exists for the lifetime of that function. While I'm in that function, this variable random number exists. Once I'm outside of that function, it does not exist anymore, okay? So that's why when I do the alert for the random number here, it says it's not defined, okay? Let's actually make this a little bit more interesting. Let me actually declare random number here inside the onClick. And let me set it to be 1, 2, 3. Okay. And let me run this and let me hit this. Again, I have the random number, which is from this function here. And now I have random numbers 1, 2, 3. Okay. So you can see, even though I declared the same variable name here, there are essentially 2 different variables, right? What I did here is declare this random number and I set it to be 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I did the alert and it shows it's 1, 2, 3. It's not the random number that was generated in the function here. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, okay, there's a couple questions coming through here. So let me just answer them one at a time. So can I do math operations with the onClick? Yes. So I can do anything I can do in JavaScript, I can do within the onClick. So anything from this double quote to this other double quote here, anything within here is any type of JavaScript. I can write the whole everything like in here. It's all like JavaScript here, right? Let me do this. How about this? I can do var random number equals to show random number, right? Of course, this is not going to work, right? What do I have to do here? I have to return this, right? So what is it that I have to do to return the random number? Like that. Let's see here. Like that. Here. Okay. You can't really tell because it just kind of behaves the way it did before, but you can see there's no alert box here anymore. So it has to be here. Let me, yeah, what the heck? Let me just, I know I'm not really being creative here, but I'm putting 1, 2, 3 here again. So let me run this and we have 1, 2, 3, okay? So you can see I'm doing any type of JavaScript that you can think of all in here, okay? In this case, I'm calling a function, I'm getting a value back from the function into here, right? And then I'm showing an alert box to pop it up here, okay? And remember, you guys know about parameters and arguments here, right? So remember this idea here. This is not the only place I can declare a variable for within this function. I can actually create the variable here, right? Assuming I'm going to pass something here, okay? So let me do this. I'm going to pass in a number 5 here, and I'm going to declare a variable called bogus number, like this. Times 5. Okay, let's see if I did that right or not. And there we go. We got 25. Okay, so what did I do here? Number 1, I created like a parameter here for this function. Okay, and within that, because I did this, I've actually declared a variable called bogus number. Okay, and then I took the bogus number, multiplied it by 5, and then I returned it back out to here. And then I'm just doing the alert box to show it, right? And remember, when I pass in this number here, 5, I'm passing that in as an argument. Okay, so this is your argument that you're passing in. Let me change that to 6. And then we have 30, right? Okay. The other thing that, you know, I saw some people kind of had some problems with is, remember, with this on click, I have this double equal here, and not the double equal, double quote here. That means when I do a quote in here, let's say I'm gonna do like var string test equal to, I need to use a single quote here, right? A, B, C, like that. And I'm gonna just do an alert for that variable, string test. string test, boom, ABC, okay? So actually, let's see what happens. What happens if I put a double equal in here? Well, it's gonna break it. I'm not, why do I keep on calling it double equal, double quote, okay? Well, you can already see it's turning red over here, right? So it's already, you already have problems, right? Why is that? Because it saw this here and the computer is trying to find the ending double quote. And what it's gonna find is this, all right? And then it's gonna think, oh, this stuff over here is garbage. Okay, so let me see what happens when I try to run this. Not good, right? So that's why it's very important. Like if you were to use this double quote out here for your on click, this has to be a single quote, okay? But actually, you know what? What happens if I do this? I do a single quote here. And I do a single quote here, like that. And then I run it and then do that, okay? So you can use it interchangeably. You just need to make sure you're consistent, right? So if you have the on click here, when you want to get done with the on click, it has to end the same way. And then whatever you do the inside, it has to be the opposite. So if you use the double quotes on the outside, then you have to use single quotes inside. If you use single quotes on the outside, you have to use double quotes on the inside, okay? Now, the other way you can think about this is, you know, let's say I'm kind of doing something here, and let's say I want to do quotes again, right? Then you can think about this in terms of maybe using escape character, right? So that you can use it properly, right? But for this class, you don't have to worry too much about that. For now, you just have to just make sure you're careful with these quotes like this, okay? But if you really do get into sort of complex stuff with different quotes and you want to display quotes or you want to assign quotes as a variable into a variable, then you might want to consider using like escape character, okay? All right. So the last thing I want to get into is arrays, which I think a number of people were talking about here. So we have a for loop here. So let me do this. Let's say var number test equals to new array. Let me use different numbers in here just to kind of. How many numbers do I have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess I should put 3 more in here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I'm just going to do the document right just to see what's in there right now. Like this. And let's see. Let me do a return. Oops, what did I do here? Okay. All right, so we can see I initialized this array properly, right? That looks fine, okay? And I just kind of displayed it here. So here, I want to set this to be 0, because remember for the array, the first element is 0, right? So it's 0. And I want it to be less than 10 because it only goes 0 to 9 for a 10 element array. Okay. And gonna take this out. And here, what am I gonna write in here? Let's do something where we print out like the elements of this array within this for loop. So every time I come through, I'm going to print out something. Okay, so the number test like this, and then it's going to be indexed with the I variable. Okay, and then BR like this, and okay. So what should this do? This should print out every element of the array with the character return. So let's see what that looks like. And let me take this out. That's not what I wanted. I still want that array, right? And then that out. Okay. Okay. So I printed out every element of the array. Okay. Now, you know, there was some question about whether I want to, maybe just like in your assignment, you're processing multiple multiple elements on each row, right? So in this case, I'm only showing, you know, this number down here, right? But let me declare another array for car test equals to new array. A, B, A again. How many is that? 3, 6, 8, 2 more. Like so. So now I have car test. So now I have two arrays that I can go side by side, right? Put my semicolons in here. And so what can I do here? I can do this. I can put in a number test, and then I can put in like a blank, and then I can put in plus, and then I can do car test like this. And then I can put in like an I, like this, like so. So let's see what looks like here. So what have I done? All right. I've basically created arrays to represent each column, right? The first column is numbers test. The second column is car test. I made them both size 10, right? And then each row corresponds to each element of the array, right? So each row would, in this case, like row 0 would be 1A. Row 1 would be 5B and 4C and so on and so forth, right? So in this way, and this is not the only way you can do it, we can actually do this in multi-dimensional arrays and whatnot, right? But this is one way we can do this, okay? So you can do this basically as an array of arrays, okay? So like in here, I can declare another array. So it's essentially like it's a multi-dimensional array. Again, I think maybe that's beyond the scope of this class. So I would say just kind of worry about it, what I just did here, okay? But you know, someone can correct me if I'm wrong here as to whether you need to know multi-dimensional arrays. As far as what I remember, looking through my notes, I don't remember you guys need to know multi-dimensional arrays. So I think this is sufficient here, okay? So if you want to print out specific element, we can use an if statement. Yes, we can, right? You know, there's a number of ways, right? So I can say if let's say number test equals to 1, and we're going to print this out. Okay, so what am I doing? So if the number equals to 1, then I'm going to print out, quote unquote, I'm going to print out this row. Okay, so let's see what happens. So here we go, right? So here's the 1, right? So any of the elements that have a 1 inside of it, which is these, I'm going to print out that row now. So that's how I'm able to isolate particular ones. So I don't know, let's look for 7, right? Here's 7 here. So if it equals to 7, I'm going to print that out. Then you have 7C, okay? So within your loop, if you want to check for certain conditions, you can do that, right? And likewise, I could have checked within the array. So if this car test is equal to A, and I'm going to print that out. So we have 1A and 5A. Okay, so hopefully that's apparent to people here. So instead of numbers, can we populate an array with variables or buttons? So I would think of like an array to basically be these containers that can hold like numbers or strings. When you talk about buttons, a button is like an HTML element, right? So not really the same, they're not really compatible, okay? Right, but to the other point about whether you can have an array of an array, yes, you can have that, okay? That's what we call like a multi-dimensional array, okay? So let me see here. Okay, good. All right, good, okay. Yeah, so the HTML for table, it's different. It's a different concept basically, right? So with the HTML table, yeah, within each of those spots in there, you can put whatever you want in there HTML wise, right? So if you want to put in like, you know, like a list within there, you could, right? So it's kind of nesting elements within HTML. But for JavaScript, you have to, it's not a compatible idea, okay? Cool. All right. So I think these were the main topics or trouble areas that I saw for people that I want to make sure I highlighted for people. Take a look at the spreadsheet stuff that I sent out, and you can send me your thoughts or questions. I'm going to actually look at people's assignments if I can to see if anyone's having problems on the spreadsheet stuff. And then I'll try to cover that for the Wednesday review session. Okay. And then next week, we only have that Monday. And I told the TAs, let's reserve that for really just open any questions you want to bring to the table. We can bring that, to talk about. Okay. So we have a question about how to do standard deviation in Excel, and I promise I'll do that as part of the Excel review session. But basically standard deviation, there's a couple standard deviations functions within Excel. So if you use that function, actually within the function, like when I type in the function in Excel, it kind of gives you like a little bit of a help in there. But I'll give you the couple, when I do the Excel on Wednesday, I'll give you the couple of different examples of those functions and why there's differences between the standard deviations for Excel. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, cool. So anyway, between now and Wednesday, if there's other topics that you would like me to cover, I believe I gave you a brief overview of like how the final exam will be structured. But if you have some questions about that, hopefully we've gone through 2 exams already. You have a pretty good idea of how these things work. But if you have any questions, make sure you send it to me, and I'll try to continue with the review session after I do chapter 22 on Wednesday. Okay. All right. So everyone is free to go. And I'll catch you on Wednesday. Okay. All right. Mancy, you have a question?
Hi.
Hi.
So it was about the assignment that we were supposed to submit yesterday.
Yes.
So I did submit it and like I got the code and everything in, but I was just rushing a little bit at the end. So I forgot to save it as like .html. Would it
Yep.
be okay if I email you the link to that as like
Uh,
my submission, or like is it too
yeah.
late for that?
No, you can send a mail to your TA because like your TAs are handling the grading. Uh,
Okay.
so just make sure you just let them know what happened. And you probably have to email the file to them.
Okay. And just a question, sorry. Like if I send it as an HTML thing over email, it should just work the same way, right?
Yeah. Assuming you haven't done anything in terms of like local files, which for the previous assignment you wouldn't have, right? Your previous assignment is just about JavaScript. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like the first HTML assignment where you had to send an image with it. So that should be fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, no worries.
Have a nice night.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
All right. All right, cool.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Charles.
Okay, so I'm just gonna be honest here.
Mm.
It's 4th of July weekend, assignment 3. I got my code from Chegg and I changed the names and numbers on there.
Right.
And I heard what you said in the beginning of class. If you owned up to it, it'd be a lot better if we could just handle it here than if it went to the Department of Academic Integrity. So I just felt like I needed to own up to it, and it was bugging me a lot, and I knew I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
And I promise you, I have not cheated on any of my other assignments.
Right.
But for assignment 3, I was busy. Like it was 4th of July weekend. I laid to the last minute. So yeah, I'm just being honest and upfront about it.
All right. No, look, that's why I kind of brought that up, and I want to see who might come forward on it. Yeah, like I said, it's not that hard for us to compare or scan for other things. It's just like search, right? So
Yeah.
And then compare. So I'm glad that you came forward with it. So as you suggest, the reason why I put that out there was to see if I can kind of keep this in-house. So I think the fair thing would be, I will talk to the TAs. We'll take some points off, but what I would like to do, maybe would you be free to have some time to meet with me one-on-one, and let's just kind of walk through the code. If I can walk through the code with you, and yeah, I get it, you copied the code down, but if you can explain to me and tell me that you understand the code, then I'm willing to just give you a partial deduction on the points.
That would be amazing, Professor. Thank you. Because
Okay.
I'm just like, I'm having like kind of like an anxiety attack because like I don't know, I need this class and stuff, but yeah, that would mean the world to me. I'm really like, you're being very thoughtful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I hear you, right? So look, I understand the situation. The class is very fast paced, and I know, the situation. It could be tempting to do stuff like that. So what I care about is that you actually learn something and you actually understand something. So like I said, send me an email later on when you have a chance.
Okay.
Just tell me when you have some time. We'll just do a one-on-one. You pull up, you can share the code with me and just walk me through the code the way you understand it, right?
Okay.
And if you can show me that you reasonably understand the code and the concepts behind it, I'm willing to just kind of let this go with just some partial deduction for the score.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Do you think you work a 9 to 5 job on top of this, right?
That's right. So usually,
so I feel like you have less time than me. So could we talk like maybe 20 minutes before our next class?
Oh yeah, that's fine. That actually would be perfect.
Okay, cool. So do you want me to just email you so you could send me a private Zoom link or?
Yeah, so you just email to me and I'll set up an Outlook calendar for you.
Okay.
And that'll have like the link on there for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. Again, I'm really sorry about this. I feel like I've been feeling like crap about it, and I'm just been waking up every morning like I'm just waiting for an email like that I got like caught. Like I just wanted to get this off my chest. Like
yeah, no, like I said, I appreciate that you came forward with this after like our discussion here. So that's why I'm willing to give you the courtesy that I'm giving you right now. As long as you can explain the code to me, we'll just take some points deduction and then we'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So send me your email. Let's get ready to talk on Wednesday before class.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll send you an email after this. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.